Hey everyone, today I have a process video using the American Crafts Shimelle's Go Now Go line. So this is something that I created for the American Crafts blog, and I started out with the idea of making sort of a shadow box. So I started out with my silhouette and I cut out that really large love title right out of some white cardstock. And my idea was to back it with a lot of the really nice prints in that collection. So I'm starting here with a sort of generic yellow print, and I've lined it up right in front of that V. And I love yellow and blue and red. And I'll show you coming up next, you'll see one of the patterns I used. I based the palette that I used here on that one pattern paper. I do that all the time. Leave it up to the professional graphic artist to choose my colors for me. I know what I like, but they're better at mixing color. So I do that all the time. Anyway, here I am just simply tracing it out on the pattern that I want, making sure that these letters are backed. Now you're going to see later on in the project that I change these up a little bit. So here it's like, don't follow this exactly yet. You're going to see the change that I make later on. I used washi tape because I think as I was creating, I knew that I wasn't going to leave the pattern paper flush up against the letters like this. And then here in the center, that's the pattern paper that I was talking about. And I'm looking for the right combination of colors to add. And I found a spot that I liked. It included the blue and the yellow and the light blue and pops of red. And so that's why I chose those rows of circles. All right, next is my little tiny photo. And here on this page, I'm going to totally cop to, kind of looks like the technique and the title kind of ate my tiny little photo. I don't do that very often. It's not really my style, but every once in a while it's nice to do something different. And that's what I did here. Here I'm free hand drawing a big heart. And I'm going to do some stitching, sort of a crisscross stitch. So I need some guidelines in order to make the holes for my stitching. And it's a little bit of a tilted heart. I didn't want anything too perfect. I didn't want to use a stencil or anything like that. And so you see me going back and forth until I get the shape of the heart exactly how I want it. Taking a look to make sure that I like the shape. We're almost done. Excuse my little hair up there. Making sure that my tiny little photo fits. I love that photo, and it's pretty much the only size that I had on hand, so I kind of worked backwards here instead of printing it out for the page I was making. I already had that photo. And the story is going to be about all the places we went that summer. So there I'm measuring out the journaling. Where am I going to put the words? And so that's why you saw I sort of used the pencil in my hand to measure out that space and then redraw the heart one more time. So next I did get out this piercing stencil that I have, and that's for the spacing. So I know that I think those are a 1/4 inch apart. And I did the first view with the stencil just to get an eyeball, sort of an estimate of how far I needed to go. And then I freehand did the rest. And of course it was very fast forwarded. It took a lot more time than that. And now I'm going to start the stitching. Now this stitching is sort of a really crisscrossed stitch. I didn't want anything too straight or too contrived. It's really freehand. Looks like crazy string out almost, string art, I mean. And it's not an original idea. I saw something like this done in a moon on a baby announcement, DIY project that I saw on Pinterest. And so it gave me a jump start to say, hey, I could do this on a scrapbook page. I'm not going to do a moon because that just wasn't speaking to me or to my story, but I'll just sort of use that idea for something else. And then here you can see the stitching process started. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit off camera there, but I think I will move it up. And I'm just going, side to side, but not evenly. And I use 3 skeins of DMC floss. I feel that that gives me the thickness that I like with my embroidery. It gives me enough texture without it becoming too bulky or too thin where it gets lost. And now I'm not going to do all this stitching on camera. You will see that I will fast forward because I don't use my craft time to do stitching like this. I set a time this aside for when I'm going to binge watch like Netflix or something like that, because yeah, I need to be doing something else while I stitch or I get really bored. But there you see where it's all completed. That probably took probably 2 or 3 episodes of some show. And now you see where I remove the pattern paper. And I'm going to draw the love right onto a piece of white cardstock. And I'm going to make sure that all those spaces are covered perfectly. So by tracing it onto the white cardstock, I don't have to worry about aligning it perfectly with that white mat that's going to go on top. And you'll see the reason why I changed my mind. And it's because I wanted to create a shadow box. I decided that I was going to fill up those letters with chipboard, and I needed some space in between that pattern paper and that white stitched mat. I didn't want them to be flush. And so what I did was add some pop dots to the back. And that's going to give me the lifts and the dimension and everything else that I wanted for this look. And I use a ton of pop dots all the time. But you're going to see the difference here. I hope on camera that you can see it. You can see that there's a little bit of dimension, a little bit of pop. You can see that cloud pattern paper sort of fade back down. And of course in person it looks really awesome. And I'm going to fill those with some of the chipboard from the Go Now Go collection. I used a little office building to represent New York City. We had visited New York City with the kids that year, and the little car. We had taken a lot of road trips. And in the center, I wanted to draw attention to all of those colorful dots, and I used the puffy hearts. That was probably my #1 favorite element from that entire collection. I think I covered almost every single circle there, and there you can see a little bit of the texture. Now my journaling, I printed out. I'm just going to cut them into some simple strips. And like you saw before, when I marked off the space for the journaling, I'm going to use the upper right hand corner and the lower left hand corner to tell my story. It's a short story, this one. Now I'm going to create a little cluster around the photo so it doesn't get totally lost, right? So by using a globe, I'm using a circle, a different shape, a contrasting shape to that square photo. And I'm also looking to add a little bit more color because all the color is so centralized, so I want to spread the color around a little bit. So I'm going to use some of the wood enamel buttons and then some of the enamel shapes that come in that collection. And this is the part I actually love the most, but I have the hardest time in designing. So this is the end where you're embellishing for the last little bit, getting everything just right. And I tend to move things around 10 times. I'm not sure if it makes that big of a difference, but I guess to my eye as I'm creating, I'm constantly shifting color and shape. Still covering up more of the white. While I love white stark backgrounds, I add a ton of color to them. So a few strips of pattern paper do that. And that's it. That is the page. Thanks so much for watching. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel to get some updates and new videos.